Just want to make sure the chat works. Can someone say like where they're calling in from today, or just say hello in the chat? I will monitor it, and we're also we are going to be keeping track of the YouTube as well. So if you are joining us on YouTube, you can chime in the comments there. But can someone say hi in the chat? I'm just monitoring the chat right now. All right, someone said hi. Greetings from Southern California. Awesome. I just want to make sure there were folks here. All right, we are officially recording now, so I will share my screen. And I also, before I forget, I wanted to give you a link to today's slides because we have some slide links in here. I just think it would be helpful for you to have everything that I have. The way today's going to work, so you already got 2 hours of volunteer time for this. So congratulations, awesome. You don't have to do anything else to get your volunteer time. Since you are RSVP'd for this event, you have it. But if you want to keep doing these projects, because all these projects are linked to ongoing events, there's a slide at the end where you can continue to get volunteer credit. So like, let's say the debris tracker project, which is actually the focus of today's event, you just love it and you want to keep doing it with your friends, your family, whoever. You can get ongoing volunteer time. Anytime you participate in debris tracker, you can RSVP for this event on the Verizon volunteer platform and get your credit. Same with IC Change. You know, that's another one of the projects we'll talk about today. If you RSVP via that event on the Verizon volunteer platform, you'll keep on getting credit and it'll be awesome. I also am going to end by talking a little about this project called Land Loss Lookout. Same deal. We got an ongoing event for it. And we also have way more than just these projects through SciStarter. You know, you can make a difference with Alzheimer's research. You can make a difference with the night sky, with astronomy. Anything there's a science for, there's a citizen science project. So you can join our community and find a bunch of different scientific disciplines where you're able to turn your curiosity about the world into real scientific impact. And I'll stop sharing my screen for a second because I just want to get the YouTube link for our friends. Okay, there we go. We are live on YouTube, so I'm just going to put the YouTube link in the chat as well. So if any of you want to watch this again afterward or want to share it with some of your coworkers because they can get volunteer time for this up to a week after this event by watching that YouTube recording, it's right there for you to participate. Okay, so I will share my screen again and we'll get to it. So I'm going to spend this first hour or so just talking to you about how to do the projects, how you can just the rationale behind it, why it matters. And then the second hour of this event where you get your volunteer time, I'm going to release you and tell you, you know, go out there and participate. And I'll put my phone number in the chat and my email. So during that second hour, if you're having any issues or you need some help participating, you'll be able to get in touch with me directly. Okay, so I'm Caroline. I'm with SciStarter. SciStarter is a global citizen science organization. And before I even explain what citizen science is, I thought I'd start with this. So millions of people enjoy science and nature. You know, you're probably one of them. If you've ever gone outside and you've looked at birds or butterflies and just appreciated them, whether you're in a city or in a rural area, if you just love being outdoors, if you've ever looked up at the night sky and tried to find a constellation, if you're curious about your brain and you wish you understood how it works better, well, you're in good company. There are millions of people just like you who are curious about the world around them and have lots of questions and who like to look around and observe. And the great news is thousands of scientists need volunteers. So one thing we say at SciStarter is scientists don't have enough eyes, ears, and perspectives to know everything there is to know, to understand everything that needs to be understood, to ask every question that needs to be asked. That's where you come in. You can help these scientists in our increasingly complicated world. You can be their eyes and ears. You can go out into the community with your smartphone and take pictures of different plants and animals to help monitor their species for scientists. And they can understand if they're endangered or threatened or if there needs to be some sort of action. You can also analyze data for scientists. And what is data, right? Data is just information. So there's one project that's featured as part of the SciStarter Verizon volunteer program called Stall Catchers, where you're able to look at videos of mouse brains and classify their blood vessels as stalled or flowing. And by making that simple annotation on the video of a mouse brain, you're able to help researchers at Cornell University answer questions about Alzheimer's disease. So that's an example of doing data analysis, going through a brief training and just getting started making a difference and speeding up this research, allowing scientists to answer these questions that we all want answers to faster. And allowing us to have a hyper-local understanding of our world, understanding our communities and the compositions of them through science. I used to be scared of science. I think a lot of you might be in that same boat. I thought of it as, oh, that was that thing, I didn't do too well on that test in school. It's all memorization. It's so scary. But then with citizen science, when I became a citizen scientist, I realized science is really cool. It's a way of thinking. It's a means of discovery. It's how we answer really important questions about the world. Questions like the ones we'll talk about today, related to environmental cleanup. This particular event is in celebration of World Cleanup Day. We're going to get you all outside and cleaning up your communities, but at the same time, we're going to be having you help scientists at the University of Georgia, National Geographic, and NOAA answer questions about patterns of litter and pollution. So that's just a long-winded way of saying citizen science allows us to team up with scientists and researchers to understand the world. And you don't need any special background to be a citizen scientist. I've worked with Girl Scouts and I've worked with retirees, people of all ages, of all education levels, from every continent. There are even citizen scientists who go to Antarctica and participate in projects. Anyone can be a citizen scientist. But sometimes these researchers who need your help can't find curious people like yourselves who want to help them. And sometimes you all can't find the perfect project for you, the thing that really addresses your interests or the topics you care about. So that's where SciStarter comes in. We connect scientists to the volunteer communities they need, and we connect volunteers to the ways that they can make a difference, the ways they can turn their curiosity about the world into real scientific impact. So ultimately, what is citizen science? It's a collaboration between scientists and those of us who are curious, concerned, and motivated to make a difference. And it goes by a few different names. You may have heard it as community science or neighborhood science. The thing we care about at SciStarter is it's just science. We want to make sure that it's real. Citizen science is distinct from science education because, you may learn something as you do it. I'm going to talk to you about some of the subject matter today and the whys of why we're doing these projects. But the important part is that you're collecting or analyzing data and someone's using it to understand the world. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. I'm just going to check in to see if there are any questions so far in the chat on YouTube or on, let's see. We got some folks watching on YouTube too. So YouTube people, we're not ignoring you. And I'll continue monitoring the YouTube live stream link through the week as different people participate. Okay. I don't see any questions so far, so we'll just keep it rolling. I'm going to show you a short video about SciStarter, just so you can get a brief overview about the global volunteer community that SciStarter enables. So let me go ahead and share. I'll turn my camera off for this short video.
Did you know that people just like you are shaping science and their future through small but important actions? That's right. You don't need a lab coat. You don't need a science degree. We're not talking about kids' chemistry kits or build a rocket activities. We're talking about real science we can do together. How can I do that, you might be wondering? The answer is easy. Become a citizen scientist. Citizen science is all about people like you and me getting involved in things that matter to us, like the environment, our health, oceans, and even space. Science needs more eyes, ears, and perspectives than any single scientist possesses.
Together, we get to make discoveries. We can make a difference by making and sharing our observations, analyzing data, or even playing a game to solve a problem. Want to learn more about citizen science? A movement that's sweeping the globe? You're in the right place. There's a lot of great material here to get you started and help you find, join, and participate in projects through scistarter.org. Visit the SciStarter website to begin exploring the possibilities of scientific participation. And create a personal account to receive project suggestions tailored especially for you. Together with SciStarter, we can all play a part in scientific research that can change the world for the better.
So that's the basic gist of it. SciStarter is a global volunteer community where people can add projects, events, and tools. Most often scientists are adding these projects. They're typically at a university, but all sorts of different people have research questions and good protocols for people to answer them. Folks can add these opportunities, and then anyone, anywhere can go on SciStarter, make an account, and discover these opportunities. There are thousands of projects listed on SciStarter, and we recognize that can be a little overwhelming. So when we partnered with Verizon, we did it through, we picked a select number of projects that we thought would be a particularly good fit for the Verizon communities. That's one thing I always like to address at the start of events. There are thousands of projects on SciStarter, but the ones that you can get Verizon volunteer credit for are all listed on scistarter.org/Verizon, and they all have an ongoing event attached to them. So we've already seen really big wins from Verizon in these projects, especially the Stall Catchers project, where you're able to classify that Alzheimer's research data. We've seen Verizon volunteers really take to that and classify more videos than we've seen with any of our other volunteer programs. So I am absolutely delighted to work with this program. I know the projects that are featured here are really grateful for V-Teamers as well. So just in terms of the quality of y'all's participation and the difference you've made, like, my hat goes off to you. I think it's really amazing what you've been able to do. So for today's event, we're celebrating World Cleanup Day. And I'm just curious, I wanted to start off with some questions. So I'll be monitoring the chat and looking at the YouTube comments. But I just want to know from the people tuning in today, what do you think is the best thing you can do for the environment? So you see litter on the sidewalk, or maybe your water quality in your area is negatively impacted. Just whatever you've noticed, whatever you've looked around and seen, what do you think is the best thing that you can do for the environment? And don't be shy. Feel free. I'll give you a second to think. You can put it in the chat. And it's okay if you can't think of it right now. I'm going to give you some ideas today of things you can participate in. Someone said use solar whenever possible. That's a great one. We got minimize the use of plastic. Educate others. Oh my gosh, you all are awesome. You're taking some of my talking points from later in the presentation. I love it. Stop littering. That's key. Yeah, thinking about our own personal consumption. Cool. All right, I have another question for you all. Oh, and someone also said awareness about waste from plastic. Yeah, awareness is a key portion of that. And that's what we're kind of doing with today's event, which I think is really cool. So what is the environment? And someone said unplug devices and chargers when not in use. That's another good one too, just like being conscious of our own usage of natural resources. But what is the environment? I'm curious to see what you all think. It's okay if you don't know the answer to this one too. The environment is everything in the space around me. Oh my gosh, you all are on top of things. The environment is the landscape in which we live and work. What I was expecting people to say is to think like, oh, the environment is a forest. That is part of it, right? That counts as the environment, but the environment is everything. Even when you're in your house or in your apartment or wherever you happen to live, you're in the environment. The environment is the entire world. We live in a natural system. And someone said that in the comments just now, natural surroundings are the environment. That's a really astute observation. So, the water we drink, the air we breathe, everything is the environment. Okay, so I'm just going to keep this going. So how is environmental conservation connected to climate change? I'm curious to see what y'all's answers are to this one. So environment reduces the impact of climate change. That's a great one. Yeah, keep those comments coming. So, we think about, so there are lots of different things we can do. So we think about like litter and pollution. Those play a role, right? And I'm about to show you something on the next slide about how environmental cleanup can be linked to climate change, how we're all interconnected. That's the whole thing about the environment. If the environment is everything, if it's our entire world, then littering or climate can also impact climate change. So what is climate change, right? It's gradual changes in weather patterns. So it's when as we emit more carbon, as we have more carbon emissions, so that comes from burning fossil fuels. So as we have more carbon emissions, our climate gets more variable. We see more extreme weather events. The earth gets hotter over time. We see trends in rising temperatures. Seasons get more variable. So climate change is the long-term change in weather patterns and temperatures. And it's linked to carbon emissions. But in terms of environmental preservation, that could be, having a lot of nitrogen in your water, sulfate pollution, which can come from fertilizers in your backyard. Or it can come from, a cigarette butt on the street. And it's all connected. So the first project we're going to do today, the real focus of today's event, is debris tracker. I was asked when we proposed this event to talk a little bit about climate change as well. So I thought, this is from the World Wildlife Fund in Australia. This is a quote from their engagement manager. I thought this was really astute, so I'm going to read it to you in full. So in our oceans, which provide the largest natural carbon sink for greenhouse gases, plastic leaves a deadly legacy. It directly chokes and smothers a host of marine animals and habitats and can take hundreds of years to break down. As it does, sunlight and heat cause the plastic to release powerful greenhouse gases, leading to an alarming feedback loop. As our climate changes, the planet gets hotter, and the plastic breaks down into more methane and ethylene, I think I'm pronouncing that right, increasing the rate of climate change and so perpetuating the cycle. So you see how, plastic in the water, you may not think at first like, oh, I don't think litter is a climate change issue, but in many ways it is. The project that we're doing today, Debris Tracker, it also goes by the name Marine Debris Tracker, even though you can do it anywhere on Earth, even in Kansas or in landlocked areas. It's called Marine Debris Tracker because eventually plastic makes its way to the ocean. So the original premise of the project was trying to figure out how do these pathways work? How does plastic make its way from a landlocked area to our oceans? And once plastic makes it to the ocean, as we see from this quote, it can become part of our climate change cycle and the negative impacts. As the Earth gets hotter, we're going to have more and more issues with environmental preservation and pollution, just in terms of cascading effects. And I think with plastic in particular, it's made from fossil fuels. It's made from oil. So just the creation of plastic objects also increases our carbon emissions and contributes to climate change. So you see how everything is connected. And this is not to make you feel hopeless. We're going to get to the hopeful part in a second and the things that you can actually do. But this is just to make us think and be thoughtful. So Marine Debris Tracker. So this is the action part of it. This is the thing you can actually do. So I have a video from the project leader that I'm going to play off the top to introduce you to the project that we're going to be focusing on today.
We're so excited you're interested in Marine Debris Tracker. My name is Catherine Youngblood, and I'm a research engineer with Jambeck Research Group at the University of Georgia New Materials Institute. We study upstream solutions to ocean plastic pollution.
With an estimated 8 million metric tons of plastic entering our ocean ecosystems every year and having devastating effects on ocean organisms that accidentally consume it, this is a problem that's growing bigger every year. We're passionate about preventing plastic pollution in our oceans and waterways, which is why we created the Marine Debris Tracker app with help from NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, almost 8 years ago. With the Marine Debris Tracker app, thousands of citizen scientists from countries around the world have tracked over 1.5 million items of litter so far. Citizen scientists just like you are helping us create a bigger picture of the plastic pollution problem by tracking trash wherever you are, in cities, near rivers, out in the mountains, or cleaning up a beach.
Thank you for tracking and for helping to protect our oceans and waterways around the world. We're happy to have you on board.
So that's the basic premise of it. The Marine Debris Tracker project, also known as Debris Tracker, that you can do anywhere in the world just by downloading that app. It's a way for you to, as you're out there today, cleaning up your communities, making your community better right then and there, to also log data about the litter you're collecting as you do it, and to contribute to a data-driven understanding of patterns and trends about how plastic pollution, debris, litter makes its way to our oceans. And you can get started with this project as I'm talking to you. I'm going to continue talking through the project and how it started and all that great stuff. But if you want to go ahead and just download the app and get started, you can go to scistarter.org/Verizon, scroll down, and click directly on the Marine Debris Tracker project, or I think it's called Debris Tracker on the page. On that subpage for Debris Tracker, you're able to download the Apple or Android app to get started. I know some folks from Verizon, when you're using your work phones, there are sometimes some issues. So a workaround I know folks have used is they've used their personal devices. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, what is Debris Tracker? Debris Tracker empowers you to fight plastic pollution by recording the litter that you see in your community. And as you participate today, as you go out and do your own community cleanup, just make sure that you're careful. If you are picking up something that seems dangerous, perhaps wear gloves. Just use best practices, use your best judgment, and always stay safe as you're out there doing it. But debris. I used to do a lot of these community cleanups in Fort Lauderdale, in Florida, for example. And the most common thing that I picked up was cigarette butts. So as I was logging my debris and doing my cleanup and logging my debris on my phone, I would say 10 cigarette butts picked up. So you're able to, when you download the app, you are able to select the type of item and the number of that item that you've collected as you go. Quick thing to do, as I know some of you are probably actively downloading the app right now, make your SciStarter account first. So when you go to scistarter.org/Verizon, make your SciStarter account, use your Verizon email address, and then when you go to Debris Tracker and you download that app, you have to make a second account, and we recommend that you use the same email address you use to sign up for SciStarter, because that helps us keep track of the number and frequency of your contributions to Debris Tracker. I can also I'm going to do this actually. I'll stop sharing for a second. I'm going to give you the direct link to that project, so you can just go ahead and start downloading it as I'm talking if you so choose. So let me just put this in the chat. And while I'm thinking of it, for our friends on YouTube, I'm going to give them the link as well. And I'm just going to put the link to my slides in the chat one more time, just so everyone has them, because all the links I'm talking about today are right in that slide deck. So let's give this to our friends on YouTube as well. There we go. And we got some folks watching on YouTube. It's so great. We haven't forgotten about you all. You all matter too. So don't be shy about commenting and letting us know how you're doing. Okay, so everybody has the links. Let me go back to the slides. Okay, so the steps are, you find the project on the SciStarter Verizon microsite, and you make your SciStarter account. Then, from that page, from that subpage for Debris Tracker on that SciStarter Verizon microsite, you download the Debris Tracker app, and you can log in through SciStarter, but I know that wasn't working for a minute, so you can also just make a second account. And you just have to use that same email address. And that helps us because it allows us to assess collective impact from the Verizon program. So at the end of the year, we're trying to see, what did we actually achieve this year? What are our data-driven metrics for success? We can say, 27 Verizon volunteers, completed 14 contributions to Debris Tracker, or whatever the numbers happen to be project by project. So that's just really helpful for us in assessing collecting impact. And it's helpful for you too, because you get some bragging rights. You can go back into your SciStarter dashboard and see the number and frequency of your contributions to all these different projects. A quick note though, your time is always tracked through the Verizon volunteer platform. So even though we track the number and frequency of your contributions to these projects through SciStarter, in terms of getting credit for your time, you RSVP on the Verizon platform to the ongoing event for this project. Your time's already counted for today because you're in this webinar with me. But if you want to keep on participating, you record your time via the Verizon volunteer platform. And I got a thumbs up in the chat. Awesome. That's good stuff. And what are our research outcomes? Why are we doing this? Well, number one, we want to fight plastic pollution together. So that's the whole picking up portion. We're picking it up, we're taking it out of our community, but also we want to identify hotspots of litter and pollution to fight for upstream solutions. More knowledge is good. And by collecting this data while you're also collecting the trash, you are creating more knowledge and allowing researchers like Catherine that you saw earlier, Catherine Youngblood, she's awesome. You're allowing people like Catherine to understand the problem at its root and figure out how is this litter, debris, plastic pollution, how does it make its way to our oceans? So there's Catherine again, another member of her team. You know, they're out and about tracking some litter, tracking some debris. That'll be you as soon as we get off this call. You'll be out in your community tracking, logging things on your phone. And just to show the power of the data you're collecting, you can actually go to the debris tracker map and you can download all the data for your community. So you can even do your own rudimentary data analysis as well. Let's say we have a lot of people in Philadelphia who participate in this project. So if you're based in Philadelphia, you could go onto the debris tracker map, download all the data for Philadelphia and start understanding like what's frequent here. You know, what are people doing? Like what pollution are people seeing? And what litter are people seeing? And then you could start doing targeted outreach. Like if there is a particular amount of a particular type of litter in an area, you could start thinking through like what's the cause of this? And that allows for targeted communication and hopefully fixing the problem. And one thing I like to do after these events, when we have a bunch of Verizon folks on the line, is I like to download all the data from that day. Because ideally, you know, all of you will be participating today or within the week. And I could download all the data from that day and start seeing like, you know, Verizon volunteers, you guys participate from all over the world. What are you collecting? What are you seeing? How is Verizon specifically impacting this project? So once again, that's the link you want, scistarter.org/Verizon. You scroll down to get started with Debris Tracker. So this is what the app looks like. Some of you probably already have the app open by this point. Once you're all logged in, you know, once you've created your account with the same email address you used to sign up for SciStarter, you're able to click Start Tracking. And the list that I recommend that you use, because different organizations have different lists, is the NOAA list, because that's what the U.S. federal government, even if you're in another country, I recommend this list because the most people have used it and it has like the most items available. So you can record if you picked up an aerosol can or a tin can or a metal bottle cap. I've found some really weird stuff on my community cleanups, and they pretty much have everything on this list that you can dream of. I think they also have another option too. If you find some sort of debris and you want to log it, you can do that there too. But this list, the NOAA list, is my #1 recommendation for sure. So you just use that list and then you start tracking. You click add as you see a different item. So as I see a cigarette butt and I'm picking it up, I click add on my phone and I'm able to log that data. So a lot of people have participated, you know, I think it's almost at 3 million now items tracked. You know, they found confetti, they found bottles, they found, you know, rope and netting. It just depends where you are in the world, what type of litter and debris you'll see. So one of the coolest things I think the Debris Tracker team has done, and Catherine Youngblood actually shared this graphic with me, is with National Geographic, they went on a research trip down the Ganges River in India. It was part of National Geographic's Source to Sea expedition. And they found different types of litter in different hotspots. The #1 thing that they found was plastic food wrappers. And then they found tobacco and sheet-like plastic fragments, papers, cigarettes. So that allows in different areas where you're seeing a lot of, you know, a density of litter in that particular place, you are able to take action empowered by that knowledge. One example I'll use from my life is I attend the University of Florida. I live in Gainesville, Florida, and I know around graduation each year, a lot of people doing graduation photos will use confetti and blow it out into the environment when they're participating in a photo shoot. So if I went around to clean that up and I logged that debris, I'd be able to understand the scale of the problem, you know, how much confetti is out there. And then I'd be able to do outreach to members of my community and say, these plastic fragments are harmful because they make their way into the water supply and then to the oceans. And then because of the, you know, the world heating up, as we learned earlier, the chemicals from this plastic negatively impact our water supply. And I could conduct a whole educational campaign about that and hopefully convince people to stop blowing confetti. because I would understand that this particular area is a hotspot for that at this particular time. So, data gives us power. But that's the basic gist of it. You go on a cleanup, you log your data, and then you can explore the math later and hopefully learn something yourself while researchers are also using your data. And you can find that project on scistarter.org/Verizon. I'm going to leave this up and see if you all have any questions about Debris Tracker before I keep rolling. Because I had some other projects I wanted to spotlight for you today in terms of what you can do to positively impact the environment on this wonderful day, World Cleanup Day. So I'm looking at the YouTube comments. I'm also looking at the chat. I just want to see if anybody has any questions, comments, thoughts. Is it a nice day where you all are located? I know it's some people tuning in from Southern California. Is it a good day to go out and collect some litter? I'm curious. I know where I am. I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. It is a beautiful day, and it's going to be a lot of fun to collect some litter later today for sure. Someone said very nice in North Carolina. Good day in Marquis zip code. Millie says it's 70 degrees where she's at. Nice. I know. I had some Floridians email me this morning, D-teamers based in Florida, and they were really worried about participating because the weather forecast wasn't great. And that's partially the reason why we allow you all to watch this webinar over the next week and just participate when you have time. Because sometimes, there might be a torrential downpour, and it's kind of hard to go out and about and collect some litter when there's a torrential downpour. Cool. We'll keep it rolling. So I was asked to talk about climate change. So even though the main project we want you all to do today is Debris Tracker, because it's World Cleanup Day and it just makes sense. If you want to do another project today and also get volunteer time for it, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about IC Change. But before we get to IC Change, which is very squarely focused on observing climate change, I wanted to give you all this stat. And my friend Max Colley at the Museum of Life and Science in North Carolina, actually, he's the one who flagged this for me. This comes from the Pew Research Center, is the place he's citing. But Max told me, surveys indicate that 72% of Americans report that they believe in climate change, but only 35% are talking about it regularly. This is a huge disparity. And think about it in your own lives. When was the last time you said the words climate change? Or talk to your family about the impacts that you perceive? It may not have been this week. It may not have been last week. I know it can be really hard to talk about, but I think it's important to change that. So how do we stop climate change? We've been talking about carbon emissions here and there throughout this event. And this book has been really important for my thinking. So I thought I'd give it a shout out. It's by Bill Gates. It's called How to Fix Climate Change. And the basic premise of the whole book is we need to get to net zero carbon emissions. And we need more research and development, R&D, to help impact it. So if we're wondering, how do we stop this? How do we make our environment better? The short answer is we need to get to net zero carbon emissions. And I know sometimes it's a really complicated field, so I thought it was important to give this the time. There's adaptation and there's mitigation. So mitigation is when you get to that net zero. You reduce the flow of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So you're stopping carbon emissions, burning fewer fossil fuels, creating less plastic. It's just the cessation, you're stopping carbon emissions. Adaptation is really important too, though, because climate change is currently happening. And we need to learn to live with and adapt to the climate change that's already been set in motion. This definition comes from NASA. So I see adaptation in my community in Florida. In Miami, for example, some neighborhoods are literally raising the roads so people can keep driving even when there's sea level rise. And adaptation can happen in your own backyard. I don't know what your climate impacts might be. Maybe, your community is getting hotter and you're living this yourself. You're like, wow, this is really weird weather for May. Why is it so hot here? So maybe you plant more trees. Planting trees actually, when you get to a certain amount of trees, it can reduce the temperature of an area. We could talk about this all day, but the urban heat island effect, for example, when we have more trees in urban centers, they actually get cooler, and it's good for public health. So that's adaptation as well. Whatever climate impacts you're grappling with, there's a way to adapt to them. And at the same time as we pursue adaptation, mitigation is really important as well. So why do we do citizen science to address the environment and climate? So, we're doing citizen science today to clean up our communities with debris tracker. Why would we do citizen science to address climate change? Climate change and environmental problems are hyperlocal. So science helps us understand the differences street by street, community by community to better address the problem. So the way you experience climate change may be different from your friend across town. Maybe you have more trees in your neighborhood, so you're less likely to get heat stroke. Understanding that difference empowers us with knowledge to make our communities more resilient. And it's important too for just any type of environmental problem. Maybe you have polluted water. So you could do a citizen science project like Earth Echo to test the water quality of your community. And with that knowledge, you could work with community leaders for change. So citizen science, this hyperlocal understanding, empowers further action. And this is basically why I participate in citizen science. It's because environmental problems and climate change can make us feel powerless. So citizen science and that data-driven understanding it gives us helps us take that power back. And I think no project better illustrates this than I See Change. So I See Change is a global community of people like you who are documenting the real-life effects of climate change and contributing to solutions. So basically, I See Change allows anybody and everybody to become an environmental reporter. When you participate in I See Change, you go to that SciStarter.org/Verizon page that we found a pre-tracker on. You have your SciStarter account. Then you click on that I See Change icon, and you go over to I See Change, and you create an account over there. You use that same email address that you used to sign up for SciStarter, and then you just post what you see. So the premise of I See Change is they want your qualitative data. They want your words and your pictures, your impressions, and they pair this qualitative data with quantitative data. Those are measurements like temperatures, or inches of rainfall. And when you combine the qualitative data that you're giving I See Change with quantitative data that they have from sources like NASA, we have a complete picture of what's going on the ground with the environment and especially with climate change. What are those hyperlocal impacts? So a big hub for I See Change is the city of Miami. I See Change has a formal partnership with them. So I See Change really hones in on flooding in Miami. So when you have sunny day flooding, like water bubbling up on the streets, I See Change asks people to take a picture of the flooding they observed, say where they observed it, what date, what time, and then, explain how it's impacting them if it's the first time they've seen that. If they, like, for example, this post right here, it says, lots of sidewalks being flooded during a recent storm and tide. Saw a senior walking through the watery areas and worried he'll slip. This gives some insights into public health. And then I See Change takes the aggregate of all those posts, and they're able to identify hotspots and also communicate with the city about potential infrastructure changes. So that allows for that adaptation response. But I See Change is global. You can do it anywhere on Earth. In Los Angeles, California, enough people posted about drought-stressed trees that led to a robust research result, a deep dive story about the future of urban trees in California. In New Orleans, Louisiana, another place that's an I See Change hub, there have been enough posts that they've influenced stormwater engineering plans, and they've helped the health department understand heat waves. And just globally, some people almost do their own self-study on I See Change. There was one person who posted every day about how extreme heat was impacting their ability to practice music. The impact on you is really important. You matter. And by giving this qualitative data to I See Change, you're helping them tell a story about climate change and have a greater understanding of it. So the thing I like about it is I See Change connects cities to engineers to residents. I got this slide from my colleague, Claudia Sebastini, who's actually based in Miami, and she works with I See Change there. The basic premise of it, as we've been talking about, is I See Change connects people to their changing environments to make solutions together. So they're crowdsourcing and analyzing that qualitative words and pictures and quantitative, numbers and measurements, data to inform public project planning, design, and emergency preparedness. And you can actually do I See Change without even leaving your home. I'm looking outside right now in DC, And I'm going to be able to say, sunny day in DC, typical weather. It's about what you would expect for September in Washington, DC. And I can post that, and that's a good post. IC Change wants you to leverage your local expertise. A saying they have is, you're the expert in your own backyard. So you know what's unusual. So if you think it's like unseasonably cold, you can say that on IC Change. You can just have that text, or you could also snap a picture. It's just whatever you observe, whatever you see, the impact of the weather on you, that helps IC Change understand climate change. So here's that post from earlier of flooding on the sidewalk in Miami. It was flagged as, unusual, severe. And as you can see, this qualitative data, these words in this picture, was paired with the sensor inputs, which is super helpful. And another thing too with IC Change, just to remind you, stay safe. Don't go out in the middle of a storm to observe. But Claudia posted this one. It was the rain bands of a tropical storm, and she was able to document the flooding right outside her door. She said, it's still raining and strong winds come and go. This is her perspective from the ground of what she's seeing in her community. Another thing that you can do on IC Change to make it a particularly good post is mention when it's the first time you've seen something. So, this is a picture of some sunny day flooding from Kate. And Kate said, for the first time that I've seen, water was lapping at the doors of a few storefronts. That's what makes this post important. And this is data that you can't get from just, rainfall measurements. We could get the inches of rainfall, but Kate's able to tell us, this is the first time she's seen this. This is severe, this is unusual, this is something we should address. And here is an example of the community coming together to report posts and identify trends. So we've had someone say drainage issue on the corner of Northeast 2nd Ave and Northeast 2nd Street. And then that was Ruben. And then Daniel replied, I noticed this issue this morning as well. Thank you for reporting it. So the community is coming together to crowdsource their data-driven understanding of what's going on with flooding. And here's some more examples. You can also have some dark humor. This person said, our new city of Miami canal system where our streets used to be, bring your own gondola. You can have your personality shine in these posts too. This is allows for some storytelling and community engagement as well. And whenever someone posts in Miami, Claudia typically replies to them. She's giving them some information about like, hey, please keep your posts coming. This is really helpful. But wherever you are, if you have your friends and neighbors, contribute to IC Change as well, you can start tracking a problem over time in a really meaningful way. Whether that's problem is heat or flooding or drought, whatever you're seeing in your community, you can report it. And these are these posts, just so you can see these pictures more that people took on their smartphones and posted to IC Change. And then we zoom out to the map and we're able to identify areas where there are trends of different things, different streets, different data points that people have reported. Data is power, and the more data we have, the better understanding we have. So that's IC Change. That's if you want to do IC Change and debris tracker today, if you want to be a superstar, go for it. But I wanted to share one more project with you and to try to give you an understanding of my why. So this is my grandpa. This is Papa. That's my grandma. And as you can see, we're Floridians. He got a skater hat right there. And I grew up visiting them on the Gulf Coast every summer up in Panama City. And I just fell in love with the natural beauty of Florida and with the community up there. But we unfortunately lost my grandfather in the aftermath of Hurricane Michael. So in the immediate term, I thought about what can I do? Like, how can I help people who are still struggling with hurricane-related displacement and job loss, and also, the negative environmental impacts of it, the long-term flooding, the long-term negative consequences, the long-term infrastructure damage. So the first thing I did was more just immediate community aid. So we did, I was able to organize folks up in Washington, D.C., where I was living at the time. We created these things called dignity bags for homeless individuals who were negatively impacted in the aftermath of the storm. I drove them down, we distributed it. And I wanted to do more. I was really interested in citizen science, and I thought, how can I also use citizen science to honor my grandpa's memory? So I find it fun just to pair my advocacy with different things like pageants. So when I became Miss Louisiana Earth, I thought, here's how I can use my pageant platform to help people on the Gulf Coast from Louisiana all the way to Panama City. My platform's going to be citizen science empowers resiliency. and I partnered with a project called Land Loss Lookout that is part of Healthy Gulf Northeastern University and this organization called Cornerscope. I asked people from all over the world to engage in online environmental monitoring to identify where land loss is occurring and what type of land loss there is. So they were looking at satellite images and classifying it. I thought this would be a great way, to honor my grandfather's memory by helping people currently living on the Gulf Coast by empowering our communities with this knowledge. So land loss is a huge problem. We're losing wetlands at a very rapid rate on the Gulf Coast. And it's a big problem too, because wetlands are our first line of defense against hurricanes. So if we understand what type of land loss is occurring and how much is occurring, that arms us against this problem and allows us to target our outreach to make it better and improve people's lives. So people all over the world were able to participate in the Land Loss Lookout project as part of my pageant platform. And we also added it to the Verizon program through my role at SciStarter, and V-teamers have gotten involved as well. And this project is actually still ongoing. They've already had a few really cool research results because people have classified this data, but there's still more data to classify and still more knowledge to create. But I wanted to kind of show the example of global collaboration here. So as part of when we were doing the campaign through the pageant, the Citizen Science Empowers Resiliency campaign, a group of students and volunteers from Nigeria were really moved by it, and they classified more data than anyone else to help people on the Gulf Coast. So here's a picture of one of the unique mappers. Her name's Dyke, and she classified 100 images alone, which I thought was really cool. And then I think this is inspiring. The students and the leaders, the volunteers from the Unique Mappers group in Nigeria, we connected them with the team behind Land Loss Lookout, and they created a project called Land Pollution Lookout, which is also in the Verizon platform. You can volunteer for it. And they used that same technology that created Land Loss Lookout to classify oil spills in Nigeria. So they're empowering environmental preservation and taking action in Nigeria with the same platform. So we're continuing to have global collaboration and people helping each other to understand the problems going on in their communities. So I shared my story with you in some of those projects, and they're all projects that you can do as part of the Verizon program, which I think is great. But I'm curious for you all, what will your citizen science story be? How will you take action? How will you empower that hyperlocal understanding of your community? And we had been asked to talk about, climate change and how these projects all connect in honor of World Cleanup Day. So what can you do? So we can do something today. So we can participate in these citizen science projects I talked about. Debris Tracker is our keynote one because it's doing some cleanups. It's World Cleanup Day. Let's do it. But I also encourage you to do these other awesome projects like IC Change and Land Loss Lookout. If you want to spend the next hour to get your 2 hours of volunteer time doing all 3 projects, hats off to you. If you end up doing that, post it in the Verizon volunteer platform because I love collecting y'all's stories. Or you could also tag us on Twitter at SciStarter or on Facebook or Instagram, whatever. I'll be monitoring all the different accounts. I would just love to hear from you what your experience is like today as you go out in the community and you do this. And if you don't want to go outside, you could do IC Change and Land Loss Lookout from home. I also recommend that you support leaders in your community who prioritize both adaptation and mitigation. So if you end up doing Debris Tracker and IC Change, for example, you could take that to your local leaders and you could say, hey, this is what I've observed in the community. What should we do about this? Could you promote this at a local level? And the more data you have, the more people you have collecting, the better. And to the extent that you can, I recommend that you embrace mitigation behaviors in your own life as we try to get to net zero carbon emissions. So, use some green energy, try to green your commute a little bit. For example, instead of driving to the University of Florida, I walk, which has been awesome for me. It helps me stay in shape. And it also, keeps me from, it also, I think, reduces my stress level because I don't have to deal with Gainesville traffic. But if you can, green your commute and reduce your home energy use. Someone said earlier in the chat, unplug your devices when you're not using it. I think all of those are great things that you can do as much as you can. And I also encourage you, to keep doing citizen science because this is an important piece of the puzzle as well, this data-driven understanding and the fight against climate change and our continuing efforts to improve our environment. So all of these are links that you all have. I gave you all my slides. I'll post the link in the chat again. But I recommend our training. You can get volunteer time later on if you complete our citizen science training that we offer to Verizon volunteers. So there's a link there. You can also get a cool badge for your LinkedIn. We have the Debris Tracker project that you can keep on doing if you want to via this ongoing event link. Remember, your volunteer time is already taken care of today, but if you want to keep on doing it, you can do that via that link. We got IC Change as well. You can keep on participating in that. Land Loss Lookout, you can keep on participating in that. And of course, our SciStarter Verizon volunteer community, you can join that and find all other sorts of projects, everything from astronomy to Alzheimer's to, zoology, whatever you are interested in. There's a citizen science project for that. And also, if you find a project on SciStarter that's not listed as part of the Verizon volunteer program, you can just email us and we can go through the process to get them all set up. So other V-teamers can do that project as well and get volunteer credit. But anyway, that's the basic gist. I see some things in the chat. Someone said so good. Someone said log in with SciStarter. Yeah, that breaks sometimes. I recommend just signing up with the same email address you use to sign up for SciStarter. That's our workaround for that for now. And that allows us to still see the number and frequency of your data contributions. Okay, so I'll stop sharing here and see if anybody has some questions. If you want to go ahead and log off and just start participating for the rest of the hour to get your volunteer time and your contributions, you can do that. I'm just going to repost the link to my slides so everybody has it, especially that last slide where I gave you the links to all the different projects so you can keep doing them. Use that as well. I heartily recommend that. I put the link in the chat on YouTube as well, so our friends over there can continue to participate too. If anyone just wants to share, what project they're going to do first, if they're going to jump off this call and go ahead and do debris tracker, you can share that in the chat. Whatever, suits your fancy, go ahead and share that in the chat. And I'm not going to read it out on the webinar, but I'm putting my phone number in the chat. And of course, you can also find me at info@scistarter.org if you need anything while you're participating over the next hour, or if some of you are watching this webinar later over the next week to get your 2 hours of volunteer time and you just need help or you want to share something, just email me, give me a phone call. Also, we have a partnership with Discover Magazine, and we love sharing stories about V-teamers because we think it inspires the rest of the global volunteer community. So if you find something particularly interesting on your walk as you're participating in Debris Tracker, or if you have an insight that you've shared on IC Change, or if you end up doing Land Loss Lookout and you just think it's the coolest thing ever and you've loved classifying some satellite data, you can get in touch and we'd love to feature you through our media partnerships just to share your story to inspire others. All right, well, I'm not seeing any other comments. Someone said, I adopted a highway and do quarterly pickup. That is awesome, Allie. You should get everyone else who does your pickups with you to use Debris Tracker. Over time, as you're doing these quarterly pickups, you might see some trends. I think that would be just like a really interesting project just for you. And also be really cool for anyone you volunteer with. That's awesome. All right, going once, going twice. Are there any other comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, whatever's on your mind? Speak now. All right, well, I won't keep you any longer. Enjoy the rest of World Cleanup Day. Happy tracking. I hope you all also get to IC Change and Land Loss Lookout. And remember, you don't have to do anything else to get your volunteer time. You're set for today, but if you want to keep on doing those projects, just participate through those ongoing events. And a big thank you to all of you for hanging out with me today, and I hope you have a good Saturday.